You may be seated. It's wonderful to see each of you today. And I invite you please to turn off your cell phones because they interfere with our sound system. And now I invite you to pause, close your eyes if you like. Today there is a great peace activity going on in Egypt. Actually, in this very hour of our service today. And in that spirit, I'm going to read St. Francis's prayer, "Make me an instrument." Let us feel, experience these words. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much to seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
And let us continue with the Lord's Prayer as it is directly translated from the Aramaic, the language of Jesus. Together. Father, Mother, Earther, and Breath of all, create a space inside of us and fill it with your presence. Let oneness now prevail. Your one desire then flows through ours as energy fills all forms. Give us this day our physical and spiritual nourishment, and untangle the knots of error that bind us as we release others. Do not let appearances make us forgetful of the source, but free us to act appropriately. From age to age, through you, flow the glorious harmonies of life. May these words be fertile statements through which our future grows. Amen, amen, and amen. I'm Susan Bowles, your platform assistant today, and we have lots of wonderful people putting on this fantastic service this morning. In the back, we have Danielle running the sound system, and Bunny is our video queen. And she's spreading her wings as video queen. And our wonderful music team, directed by David Lacombe. The musicians are Wayne, Dan, Tom, Kevin, and Phil. I think I was William. I don't know why that came up. And our singers today are Mary Lou, Paula, Lori, and Marlene. And Cynthia, you sat down on me. Our message this morning in meditation will be presented by our wonderful minister, Reverend Margaret. And today we have a wonderful new person going down with the children, Ashley. Allison, I'm sorry. Allison, please forgive me. And I understand that Gigi is going to be there with Allison. Thank you. And our ushers in the back there, thank you to Kate and Eileen. Thank you very much. Let's give everybody a round of applause. And now we're going to sing I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. And while we're doing that, we'll be passing the duo cans, the Do Unto Others. This is not our regular offering. It's an offering to help people in our community that need extra help right now.
I'm always hot. Margaret's signaling. Turn her down. She looks like she wants you to turn her down.
Is up here. He creates a magnificent PowerPoint and is here with us today. Thank you, Javier. And now we invite all children to please.
I don't see one child in here today. Can that be true? Well, I know there's lots of childlike people. But are there little children? You want to come on up, Stevie? We have no children here today. I know Gigi's downstairs with Giovanna. So you know what we're going to do? We'll save this story for next week about Sam the Sea Cow. All of you will want to come back and hear about Sam the Sea Cow. But let's bless our children anyway with the children's blessing. So for all the children in your life and all the children of the world, let us say this together. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you. We behold the Christ in you, and we love you just the way you are. Okay. I'm going to stay in place for some announcements. We have Kamare, the documentary. This is a great documentary, y'all. I've seen it about the young man who was born into a Hindu family, but not a religious Hindu family. They were a wealthy business family. And his grandmother was an impact in his life, and he wanted to tap into the kind of spiritual energy that he felt when he was in her presence. So he went on this long journey, studied with yogis, studied about yoga, and became a teacher. And then he set out on this quest to see if he could become like a yogi. And I won't tell you anymore. But it's a great documentary about the inner yogi, the inner master that we all have within us. So that's Friday night the 23rd. Here is the list if you want to sign up for the dinner and a movie. Charlene needs to receive your $10 donation ahead of time so she knows how many beans to buy. Okay? And next is our Canuga Unity Conference coming up in September. The information about that is down on the bulletin board. And our second annual Unity Golf Classic. Kate, come on up. And while she's coming up here, I can tell you that David and I have made the plunge. We're going to sponsor 2 golf carts. That's one of the ways we're going to participate, so I'm handing this in today with my check. Okay, take it away.
And I have other checks for the party part, so if you're not a golfer like myself, but you would like to participate, you can come for the after party for the banquet. We'll be doing our awards and presentations and having a lovely meal and lots of silent auction and raffle. We're doing and if you are golfing...
Let me hold stuff for you.
And if you are golfing, you want to take one of these green forms downstairs. It has your registration for your team on the back. If you don't have a full foursome, however many people you have, we'll match you up with a foursome. And then we're having a special wine raffle. And so Jennifer Braley started us off with our first bottle of wine.
Thank you,
Jennifer. And so Long Bay Symphony, we're kind of adopting a raffle that they do, and it's been very successful. So if everybody can bring in your favorite bottle of wine, if you're not a wine drinker, somebody will recommend something for you.
Great. And can I turn my check and form into you? Alrighty, yay. And then we have the revitalization committee. Y'all, we are looking at ways of how to use this building space in more wonderful ways. And so we're looking at how to divide rooms, how to rent rooms out to healing practitioners. So if you want to be a part of that team, see Tom, Bill, Carlotta, and Mary. And especially if you have an eye for color and interior design, see one of those folks, or me, or Charlene. And I think, World Day of Prayer. That comes up September 12th. Bonnie Scrudato is the facilitator and the mother of that event this year. It's a fabulous, powerful event. So if you want to be a part of the prayer vigil or help be a part of creating that, please get in touch with Bonnie Scrudato. And that's it for now.
And now I have the opportunity to say a few brief words about unity. The focus today is peace. And Myrtle Fillmore and Charles Fillmore, co-founders of Unity, expressed that. Many of you are familiar that Myrtle Fillmore had incurable tuberculosis. And after a talk that inspired her, she decided, first of all, she accepted totally her condition, and she also accepted the fact that there was a divine presence within her and within every cell, and she began to communicate with those cells. Charles Fillmore noticed the difference in her. She was cured and ended up living until she was 86 years old, I believe. And like many husbands, he perhaps was a little bit behind her in this spiritual activity. But he saw what happened with her and he said, he believed in the scientific method. Well, if it works for her, it should work for me too. So he accepted the fact that his wife was onto something. He accepted the fact that he had his own shortcomings, and he spent many times, long times, in the presence, communing with God. And we are reaping the benefits today. So, peace. First, accept. Accept what is in the outer world, accept what is in the outer world, and create peace. Welcome to everyone, and we invite anyone who may be here for the first time or returning after a period of time to stand up and introduce yourself if you're comfortable doing that. Do we have anyone today? Yes.
I'm Ralph Ray. This is my wife Ann Ray, and we live in Shadyside, Maryland, on the Chesapeake Bay, and we come from Unity by the Bay in Annapolis.
We're so delighted that you're visiting with us, and we hope you'll come back time and again. Hopefully all of you felt as you walked through the doors this morning that you were walking into a heart of love and a place for you had already been prepared, because that's the truth. Now I'm going to read the daily word. The word today is welcome. The affirmation: I greet this day by praying, Good morning, God, together.
I greet this day by praying, Good morning, God.
Every day is a miracle of life unfolding. I begin my day and welcome a fresh opportunity to co-create with the divine by saying, Good morning, God. Through this simple prayer, I establish my relationship with infinite creativity and establish an expectancy of good. As I meet and interact with others throughout the day, I share my enthusiasm for the sacred experience of life with a welcoming smile, an encouraging word, or a helping hand. If challenges arise, I remember I am not alone. I welcome the guidance and wisdom of God working through me. When I complete a project or am successful in meeting a goal, I praise the gifts and the power of the divine revealed through me. In Psalm 65, verse 8, You make the gateways of the morning and the evening shout for joy. That's a good one. Let's say the affirmation again. Together? Welcome. I'm sorry. I got mixed up. The word is welcome. Now let's say the affirmation together. I greet this day by praying, Good morning, God. And now we have a song.
From our own Joyce Rip.
I send my love over the mountains. I send my love over the sea. I send my love into the heavens, and it returns to me. I send my joy over the mountains.
Thank you. A beautiful song. And now, I have the opportunity to tell you that a gift is returning to us at this very moment because our beautiful minister, Reverend Margaret, is going to speak. The title is The Law of Compensation.
There's Joyce. We want to just recognize Joyce. Yeah, can I share? Yeah, Joyce has had a passing in her family, her stepmother, so we bless you and your family and her on her beautiful journey. And how satisfying it must be for you to hear this song sung with such respect and honor for your gift of songwriting. Thank you. It's returning to you. I first heard that song at a women's conference in Breckenridge, Colorado, where Pam and I went together, a religious science women's conference, and Karen Drucker was there singing this song. Little did I know that one day you would be with us here, or I would be with you here. Okay, let's take a deep breath. The song we just sang, if all we want to do is just look at the words of the song, we don't have to listen to the rest of the message. Because that song, I send my love and it returns to me. I send my power and it returns to me. I send my joy and it returns to me. I send my forgiveness and it returns to me. All of that sounds so much more beautiful than the law of compensation, which is the title that Eric Butterworth gave to this idea. You know, that what we cast upon the water returns to us, what we give, we receive. And so some call that the law of karma, and Butterworth, our book for the last several weeks, Discover the Power Within You, the Sunday series talks, and the Tuesday night class, which, by the way, we have 2 more classes. Even if you haven't been coming, you're welcome to join us. Butterworth is one of the most well-known unity ministers in our movement. He taught in New York City for many years. Mary Lou got to see him in person. Blessed. His wife Olga and Eric Butterworth. I never met them in person, but some of you did. We lived up in New York. He was put on the map then, years later, by Oprah and Maya Angelou, who count him as one of their greatest spiritual teachers. So that's a little bit about Eric Butterworth. And the law of compensation, he writes in his book, and for those of you following along in your Bibles, page 134, every once in a while my Southern Baptist Pentecostal roots show up. I was at a healing conference one time with Father Diorio. Anybody remember Father Ralph Diorio? Yes, a healing priest from New Jersey. And we were in a huge coliseum in Jacksonville, Florida, like 5,000 of us, and he said, all of you who have your Bibles, please open them now. And he said, and all of you Catholics, look on with a Southern Baptist. Okay, that's just a little thing. So, Eric Butterworth, he writes that God is often portrayed as capricious and changeable. And we've been taught, many of us, that good people suffer for some inscrutable reason, of God's own reason, and then they're rewarded in some future heaven. And conversely, people go unpunished now, but they'll get there. In a roaring fire pit of hell. And that's what many of us have been taught. And Butterworth actually has the audacity to say it is likely that the whole Christian concept of Judgment Day has arisen out of humankind's feelings of self-pity in the face of the inequities of life and his subconscious desire to even things up in some later time. So he's proposing that this idea of Judgment Day and this idea of retribution and punishment has grown out of humankind's consciousness, that it has nothing to do with this presence that we call God. Amen. Oh, you have an amen. Okay then. And so this may not fit with your theology, but this is Unity's theology, that there is not a God sitting out somewhere in some far-off place that's deciding whether or not to reward us or punish us, that we're actually creating enough of our own punishment and our own reward. So we can take a deep breath on that. If this is not exactly your theology, just open your heart and mind and let's listen to what Unity theology is about this. Jesus, he said that kind of reward-punishment concept is the religion about Jesus. But it's not actually what Jesus taught. What Jesus taught is oneness with God, is self-realization, and the idea that you are the divine, that divinity lives within you, and that you and I are in training, as it were, to become the, quote, Christ of the world. That's a consciousness, you remember? Christ is a consciousness, not a name. And so we're in training to live in that presence and live in that consciousness. So let's take a deep breath on that. Jesus did not teach reward and punishment by God. Jesus taught about oneness and divinity, and that we would realize who we are, self-realization. We would realize in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, and there's lots of those moments happening now, have you noticed? You know, used to, I would have a spiritual experience and I would tell the story for 5 or 10 years. You know? And now have you found that the spiritual ahas, the moments of awakening are coming so fast that there's no time to tell all the stories. We just walk around and smile at one another and nod, you know. Yeah, but we used to get so much mileage. You know, we'd write whole books about one spiritual awakening moment. So Butterworth goes on to say on page 136, he talks about this idea that what Jesus was really teaching is the truth that sets us free. And that truth, sorry to say, because we used to get so many good sermons out of this idea, it's not the truth that you must be saved by one person named Jesus. It's that we are saved by our own decision to give ourselves over to this inner consciousness of oneness. We save ourselves and we do save one another. There's a saving consciousness, a saving presence that we enter into in this place of oneness and peace, known by many names. We'll call it the kingdom of heaven. And that it's your decision and my decision. And what I am learning is it pretty much is an ongoing decision, not just every day, but like every 5 minutes. Every second. Okay. Okay, now I will again enter the kingdom of heaven. Okay, and now I will again enter the kingdom of heaven. Last night, coming home from seeing The Butler. Okay. Fabulous. Some of it's very hard to watch, but I figure, I better watch it. If these people lived it, I better be able to watch it. So I was going home. David was my passenger. And I was in the kingdom of heaven consciousness. Going through a 25-mile-an-hour zone there at Polly's Island, and somebody was pushing on my bumper. Go faster, go faster. So I just pulled over and let him pass, and I went, and then David said, so, how's that oneness consciousness? So, Jesus was from the Middle East. Everybody knows that, right? Okay. And Jesus was Jewish. Everybody knows that, right? And so Jesus was familiar with this idea of karma. It's a concept that he would have known. And he taught about the law of compensation, that as you give, so you shall receive. The idea of there's a sequence of events, and then there's consequence to the sequence of events, right? There's always an outcome and a next opportunity and events growing out of events. It's cause and effect. And it's what he told us, according to Butterworth, and I actually agree with Butterworth, that this idea of the law of karma or cause and effect, it applies to the physical and the mental world. It applies to physical and mental world. But there's another aspect of us, which is the spiritual. And in the spiritual, the higher law overrides or supersedes the lower mental or physical laws. We're going to talk some more about that. That there's a higher consciousness, and when we are working with the ideas of cause and effect and the consequences of our decisions, you know, we're constantly working with that, right? I mean, Susan came back from India and she was telling us, you know, when we know this, we've heard it in many different healing modalities, the idea that we've got to get clear with our mother-father stuff in order to be fully awakened. Darn, we thought we could just skip over that part, right? Because we're multidimensional beings. We're living in body. We have mind, we have emotions, and we're spiritual beings all at the same time. And if we want to be fully awake, we have to do our work. Oh, you thought if you came to Unity you wouldn't. Sorry. We're working out our own awakening. So Jesus taught about this, and he taught about going into this higher consciousness. In other words, in the physical and mental, there are things that we do to ourselves, to other people, that there's going to be consequences. But if we want to override or overcome, we have to rise into what Jesus called the higher mountain consciousness. Remember, he went to the higher mountain before he taught. And there's a higher mountain consciousness that we want to go to. And in that place, we are released from the, quote, law of karma. We are released from the law of cause and effect. Let's take a deep breath on that. Remember the film, The Dhamma Brothers, that we showed about Vipassana meditation? And the men who are in this maximum security prison, and they learned about Vipassana meditation. And remember that these fellows, who will never probably literally get out of the physical prison, they said after learning of the Vipassana meditation, where they could rise to that higher consciousness, they said they felt more free than they'd ever felt outside of prison. That's the higher consciousness that Jesus was talking about. So these fellows, these, quote, convicts, they're experiencing the consequences of their actions. There are consequences, so they are sitting in prison and probably will be there for the rest of their lives. However, they, excuse me, y'all just take a moment. They are reporting that they feel more free now spiritually than they ever felt in the freedom outside prison, quote, freedom. Now that says something to us. That's a teaching for us. If people in a maximum security prison can experience this kind of freedom, then you and I have no complaints. We're able to walk around, drive around, visit, with our friends. We're able to live lives of freedom. But how many of us in our minds, me included, are imprisoned many times in old emotions, old ideas, old beliefs, old places of unforgiveness or anger? I won't look while we ponder that. So we want to rise to a bigger consciousness. You all remember the story of Jesus when the crowd of angry men brought to him the woman who had, quote, broken the law. Remember that story?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to rewrite that story about the men who had broken the law with her. But for this morning, we will just story the way it's reported to us in the scriptures. You know, it wasn't just the woman that they were trying to bring to justice. They were trying to trick Jesus. They wanted to see what this rabbi, this fellow that was getting all this attention with this new way of being, this new way of thinking, they wanted to trip him up. So they brought in the woman who had broken the law, the adulterous woman. And you remember the story that he paused. He didn't say right away, listen guys, let me tell you what you ought to do. You got to drop those stones right now. You have no business doing this. You were out there sinning with her. No, he didn't say that. He paused. And you remember that he said, if any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw the stone. It's a story about judge not lest ye be judged. He did something interesting. We're told that he knelt down and he drew something in the sand. And of course, there's lots of ideas about what he was drawing. In my imagination, I think he probably wrote in Aramaic, breathe. This isn't as bad as it looks. Can you imagine being that woman? We have a present day story with Malala, the young girl who the Taliban attacked. Imagine being faced with that kind of hatred and rage and righteous indignation and terror. And again, if you haven't seen The Butler, go see that. These freedom riders riding on the bus and being faced with the KKK and the burning crosses. He did something that we're all invited to do. In a moment when we feel like launching an attack, when we feel like launching our anger, when we feel like hurling that stone of words or thoughts or ideas, we're invited to pause. Take a breath. What are we doing? We're recentering. And it takes practice because sometimes our actions are so quick. You know, we act without thinking. So this takes practice. So the more we do it, the more we're able to do it immediately instead of going into attack. We pause. Just take a moment. Take a breath. Center. And what we're doing when we do that is we're going into the high mountain consciousness. We're accessing the higher perspective. We're accessing the place that we can act with more honor or wisdom or peace. We're taking an action that will hopefully create more peace instead of more harm or more anxiety or more discontent, where our goal is to create peace rather than harm. And that's what he was doing. And from that place, because you see, if Jesus had entered the consciousness that the angry men were in, or if he had entered the consciousness of the woman who was in terror, I'm sure, in that moment, because, you know, it wasn't just picking up little tiny stones and throwing them at the individual. It was big, giant stones that they would pile on top of the body of the individual until they couldn't breathe. It was a horrible thing. And so he didn't enter into her consciousness of fear. He didn't enter into the consciousness of the angry crowd. He entered the high mountain consciousness to access the words and the consciousness that were above what was happening in that moment. Above the physical, above the emotional, above the mental, he went into the high mountain consciousness. And that's what he said. He didn't accuse them, and he didn't agree with them about accusing the woman. He just simply said, fine, if you're without sin, throw the first stone. And you know the rest of the story. The stones were dropped and the men walked away. And then he turned to her and he said, your accusers are gone, and I'm not going to accuse you either. Now go and sin no more. Now what does that mean? That means go and live from a higher consciousness. Sin means missing the mark of our higher consciousness. It means missing the centered place. It means going into tilted consciousness. Sin is not making the highest and best choice. So Jesus was talking about something that Michael Singer talks about in The Untethered Soul that we study on Wednesdays in our book group. And he talks about this higher consciousness being the seat of consciousness, the seat of the observer, the seat of the witness. This is artwork by Alex Gray. And this is his portrayal of the seat of consciousness. And you see the heart and the mind are working together to access the higher consciousness, the spiritual consciousness. So we're working, in our physical, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual. And in this seat of consciousness, we have a higher view. And so Michael Singer, in that book, Untethered Soul, he talks about in that place, that seat of consciousness, we are able to observe what's happening without getting pulled into the place where we create more harm. And so that's what we practice with our meditation, our prayer, our affirmations. When we come to places like this and agree together that we are the divine, we practice accessing that consciousness. But sometimes we tumble from it. And as we know, we feel the feelings there, we feel the discontent, we feel the anxiety, but then the more we practice, the more we lift up out of that more quickly. Because we've spent far too long in the anxiety consciousness. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like the Hopi tell us, release struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. Many of us are practicing living our lives without so much struggle. In fact, living life with no struggle. And in order to do that, we have to access the high mountain consciousness. Because there's so many things in the world that break our hearts, right? There's so many things going on in the world that break our hearts. Right now, some of us who know James Twyman, he's there with his peacemakers. He's in Egypt right now with a group of people meditating while we're here talking of these things. And so we just want to hold in our hearts this group of people who have gone to Egypt, first Syria, then Egypt, to do prayers for peace. And they're doing peace vigils today with Egyptian citizens. So this higher seat of consciousness is where we strive to be as we live in physical bodies and live human lives. But sometimes we leave this seat of consciousness and we go into the fall. Oh, and you see, those of you in the back, that's a pink glazed donut from Dunkin' Donuts that he's chasing off the cliff. Now, what else could this donut represent?
Lead us not into temptation.
What takes us into the fall? What takes us into the plunge? Judgment. Anger. Desire. Control. Resentment. So all the things that take us into the fall. Now here's the thing. Is his name Bart or Bert? Homer. What?
Bart's his son.
Homer. See, I never watched that. Okay. So Homer, for all of you Simpson fans, you can pray for me. It's not that we're saying it's wrong to have feelings of anger or anxiety or discontent or overwhelm. Of course it's not. It's not something that God designed to trick us. It said be spiritual, but you're going to have these feelings. It's not a divine setup. It's that we are spiritual beings living in human bodies. We're going to have these feelings of overwhelm, of sadness, of discontent. The idea is to remember that those feelings are not who we are. Those anxieties are not who we are. Who we are is this. And we're living in physical bodies, human lives, and sometimes we're going to forget the high mountain consciousness and we're going to fall into this place of thinking that we are our feelings. Thinking that, I can think I am overwhelmed. I can think I have been betrayed. I can think that I have been treated poorly. And here's the thing about those experiences when we fall from that high mountain consciousness, we learn a lot in the tumble. We learn a lot in falling. The hitch is we don't want to stay in the fall. We want to learn from it, glean what we can from it, and then rise up again into high mountain consciousness. That's so cute, isn't it? So what we have our eyes on is where we're going to go. So right now, many of us, we see in the world there's lots of upsetting things going on. So where do we keep our eyes? Do we keep our eyes on the upsetting things that are going on?
Nope.
Or do we keep our eyes on the potential of humankind that's in our very DNA for waking up and remembering who we are? Yeah. Door number 2. So this is a picture of a place where I didn't keep my eye on the higher mountain consciousness. This is the Gunnison River in Colorado, and that's the Hail Mary Rapids. And the instruction was, so we're going this way, the instruction was, go to the left of the eddy. Go to the left of that rapid. So what I chose to do, I kept looking at the place where I didn't want to go. Right? Have you ever done that? Yeah. We keep looking at the thing we're most afraid of, and what do? We go right
there.
into it. We keep looking at the thing we don't want, and what do we create? So I went right into the Hail Mary with my canoe partner, which was not David. He did something else fun with that rapid. He went through it backwards. But that's another story, isn't it, honey? We both lived to tell about it, but the instruction from our guide, Bob Woods, Course in Miracles teacher in Colorado, he kept saying, go to the left, go to the left, go to the left. And what I did is I went right into the Hail Mary, because that's where I was looking. Good news is I learned a lot. I learned that I was much stronger than I thought, and I could paddle really fast and really hard to get out of that, because that's a place where canoes flip over and people get caught in the eddy of that rapid. So what do we want to do? We want to keep our eyes on the higher mountain consciousness, or the place where we want to go. So where is it we want to go? We want to go towards peace, right? Towards harmony, towards forgiveness, towards higher understanding. But some of us, me included, sometimes we spend a whole lot of time telling the story about how bad it is, right? How badly it hurts, right? Ask Pam. So, this is a great quote from the yoga class yesterday that some of us took. Yoga is the practice of tolerating the consequences of being yourself. Isn't that a great quote? It's from the Bhagavad Gita. Yoga, meaning our work. Our work is the practice of tolerating the consequences of being yourself. Somebody said, yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah. So sometimes we are going to be guided to be the trueness of who we are. And I can tell you, somebody's not going to like it.
No.
The consequence of someone else being disappointed because you did not fulfill their picture of who you should be. All who have had this experience, does it feel good?
No.
Does it feel good to be excommunicated? Does it feel good to be shunned by your family and your community? Does it feel good to receive, the energy of someone who is highly offended by you? Does it feel good to be attacked? Does it feel good to be the attacker?
No.
Ultimately not. So this is our practice. Here's what St. Germain said. Breathing with intent of peace opens up all of the doors for all of the people. And that does not require a church with a steeple. Use your sacred breath and allow Spirit to do what it does. Bless everything. Bless everything. Even when you feel attacked. Bless it. Even when you feel betrayed. Bless it. Even when we feel that we are not being treated with respect or that our world is in so much trouble, we watch the news, we see what's going on in the lives of our human family, bless it. If we're not careful, we're going to keep our eyes on that rapid where we don't want to go. If we don't take care, if we don't carefully hold what's happening in our lives and in the world, we will create more harm rather than harmony and peace. We will keep our eyes on an emotional state of creating more harm. Just the first line, breathing with intent for yourself and the world. Breathing with intent of peace opens up all of the doors, all of the doors, all of the chakras, all of the energy systems, all of the places of awareness, opens up all of the doors for whom?
Everybody.
All of the people. There's a sign on my desk that says, God bless the whole world, no exceptions. And so we learn to do that in our lives. God bless my world, God bless my people, those with whom I've experienced harmony and those with whom I've experienced disharmony. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Thank you, St. Germain. So, Butterworth talks about this scripture. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. And from here on out, we're going to talk like that. So what does this mean? I don't know if I get that, because I prayed for stuff that I never got. I say, good for you, that's probably a good thing. What does that mean? To ask literally means to claim as your own, to demand from the law of compensation, the law of universe, but it requires something. When we claim something as ours, whether it's health, body, mind, spirit, whether it's peace and harmony in your relationships, in your home, we claim it and we receive it in our consciousness. How many of us have prayed, oh God, please change this? I doubt that will ever happen. Oh God, please let there be, let there be peace on earth. But can you believe what's going on in the world? Can you believe it? Let there be peace on earth. Can you believe what's happening in Egypt? What do we do with our thoughts? Yeah, we dissipate the energy. Thank you, Paula. We have to receive in our consciousness peace in the hearts of humankind as we hold in prayer what's going on in Egypt or Syria or Myrtle Beach or our lives or our hearts or our minds. We have to claim it in our consciousness. That takes a lot of practice, at least for me it does. Y'all may have it figured out. But I'm still learning to be in the consciousness of oneness and proclaiming peace even when I see the circumstances in my world unpeaceful. To be in that consciousness of peace even when we see what's going on in our world. If any of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone. So we see things going on in the world. We say, oh, how can they do that? How can they do that? We're throwing stones. The higher mountain consciousness is, let's just take Egypt for an example. They've been taught a consciousness of an eye for an eye. They're in that place of thinking. And we've all been there. And that was the consciousness that Martin Luther King was experiencing in the world when 50 years ago he said, I have a dream. I've been to the higher mountain consciousness. I've seen what's possible for humankind. He was living in a world that was still trapped and imprisoned in a place of thinking that it was okay to treat other human beings with unkindness. And yet he said, I've been to the mountain consciousness. I have this awareness that humankind has built within them this possibility, this potential to make another choice in the way we treat one another. It's the law of compensation. And he, together with people like Gandhi, said there's a way to bring change in the world. And it's not an eye for an eye. It's not killing in order to stop killing. Oh, I have so much to say about that. Martin Luther King, 50 years ago today, said, I have a dream. Now, how many of us have recently felt overwhelmed with what we see going on in the world? You know, it seems like one problem hinges on another problem, creates another problem, doesn't it? We have to go to this place that Martin Luther King was living from and seeing from and speaking from. And there will be those around you who will say, are you kidding? Buy a gun. We laughed. On NPR this morning, not on NPR, I was watching CNN, that Good Morning Sunday thing, and they were reporting that in some college libraries now, they're putting couches that have bulletproof fabric that they're made out of, so children can hide behind the couch. And some of them are suggesting that inside the couch there be a compartment where they hide a gun so they can protect themselves.
God.
And the newscaster was actually laughing as she was saying it. And I have to admit, I wanted to slap her. I wanted to say, are you crazy? How can you laugh giving this report? This is growing out of a terrorizing situation that our children are facing in schools. How can you laugh? It's like she was not conscious of what she was saying. She was disconnected. Yeah. So so now I'm back centered. I'm blessing her. I'm writing an email in my mind. Be present with what you're doing. Be present with what you're saying. This is growing out of a very sad situation. So let's take a deep breath. And watching this film yesterday, I don't know I know what was happening with David and me when they showed these scenes of Vietnam. So many emotions. I could feel the people around me, what we were feeling. I could hear people crying, especially when the Freedom Riders were on the bus and the Ku Klux Klan was attacking the bus. And so, we were with Pam and her husband, and I took a deep breath, and I blessed all of the people who were on the bus, all those Freedom Riders, there were hundreds of them, and the people of the KKK, because they were taught to hate. And that's the higher mountain consciousness. The people who were doing that, I'm guessing, were raised to hate. And if you read mine and David's book, you know that our grandfather, Pam and my grandfather, rode with the Ku Klux Klan as a young man. And my father told me once that he found in a trunk when he was about 6 years old, he found 2 red costumes. And he figured out years later that one was for his father and one was a small costume for him. Now, circumstances changed, and my father never had to go through that. He never had to be taught the hate. His circumstances changed. But he carried that shame with him through his life. And he carried the anger at his father, my grandfather. Let's take a deep breath. These are the days when we're able to access this higher mountain consciousness more easily, more often. We're able to go into the perspective of blessing everyone involved with creating harm in the world. Those who were harmed and those who did the harming. We're able to do what Jesus did in that story. You who are without sin, cast the first stone. There was a woman in Santa Barbara who said to me after we spoke at Santa Barbara Unity, she came into my home a few days later with an appointment, and first thing she said to me was, she said, I really can't stand you. It's a happy ending. And I took a deep breath, like Sharpie Hay. And she said, the reason I can't stand you is because you talk with a southern accent. She said, and in the South, I learned to hate people like you with white skin who talk with a southern accent and were so hateful to me and my family. She was a woman of color. I took a deep breath. She said, but I'm here to heal and forgive. And that was the first moment that I said out loud, my grandfather rode with the Ku Klux Klan. And she became my healer because she witnessed my family shame. And we healed together. And it was the first moment that I got it. Generational healing is happening. When you and I sit together and witness together the shame, we feel it. The pain, we feel it. The sadness, we feel it. And then we open up to the healing. We open up to the higher mountain consciousness. She was my teacher and my healer in that moment. Because she had the courage to walk in and say, I don't like you because of the color of your skin and your accent. You represent a group of people that hurt my family. Little did she know that my ancestors really, really did hurt her ancestors. And so, we're in this moment, in this day, when we become the saviors of one another. We become the saviors, the saving presence of one another when we have the courage to speak of these things, like this film yesterday, The Butler. We speak of these things and we let ourselves heal. We let our generations heal through us. Those who've gone before us and those yet to come. That's how powerful you and I are as a presence of healing and peace in the world. Right now in Egypt, this is what is happening. Also in Egypt, this is happening. There's a peace vigil going on right now. We're going to go into meditation in a moment and let our consciousness even be more fully with this idea that we have the capacity to know that what we're giving out into the world is returning to us. We cannot attack other people and then expect not to be attacked back. So we need to decide that what we're going to give out into the world is peace and healing and forgiveness. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to, I'll ask you right now, take a deep breath. We're going to pause. We're going to breathe and we're going to center. We're going to sing a very simple song and then go into meditation. And I'm asking you, whatever's going on in your heart and your mind and your generational patterning, let this be a moment of healing for you, and all those with whom you're connected, your generations. Let it be a moment of healing for you. Let there be forgiveness. Let there be healing of the shame, healing of the anger, healing of the feelings of sadness. Let's heal together, shall we? So let's take a deep breath. So we take a deep breath, and we pause, and we let our hearts and our minds feel the words of this song. We allow ourselves to move. We allow ourselves to move to the higher mountain consciousness. Where we can see with a clearer perspective, a perspective of forgiveness, a perspective of peace, a perspective of harmony. And we do this for our generations, all those who went before us and all those yet to come. We breathe in peace and healing and forgiveness into those places where we feel shame and anger, discontent. We breathe in peace to those places where we want to create more harm and more unkindness. We breathe in peace to those places where we want to launch attack. We breathe peace and healing and forgiveness into those places in our generational patterning where there has been unkindness and harm. We breathe peace and healing into those places in the heart of humankind where we are still attacking one another, where we're still causing harm in the world, to our planet, the environment, and to children. We breathe peace. We breathe peace. We breathe peace. We breathe peace into the world right now, into places like Egypt and Syria and Palestine and Israel. We breathe peace into the streets of Chicago and Myrtle Beach. We breathe peace into the streets and towns and cities of this country and all nations on this planet. We breathe peace into old beliefs and old religious ideas and old political ideas that are creating harm in the world. We breathe peace into the minds and hearts of all world leaders who are choosing to create more weapons to cause more harm. We breathe peace into the chambers of governments everywhere. Let there be peace. We breathe peace to surround these peace troubadours in Egypt right now. We're standing on the border right now with many Egyptian refugees leaving the cities and towns, trying to get over the border, and we are breathing peace, surrounding them with peace as they hold their candles, their lighters, their flashlights, raising them up as a symbol of bringing light into the world, into our human consciousness. As we take a moment of silence, we open our hearts and our minds to the higher mountain consciousness of peace and healing and forgiveness and kindness. Consider that we have within us the consciousness of the woman who broke the law. We also have the consciousness of the angry crowd. And we also have the consciousness of the rabbi. In this moment, we allow our consciousness of the rabbi, of Christ, to expand so much that we're able to access the wisdom and the actions and the thinking and the beliefs and the words to speak these words of peace into the world, to be the presence of peace in the world. We have the capacity, just as Jesus did, to make the higher choice. We bless our human family and we bless our planet now. Peace, peace, peace. Namaste.
And I'll take another breath. Thank you, Reverend Margaret, for inviting us with such love and gentleness to look behind the closed doors in our hearts and be clearly going out behind us. Thank you for leading us so gently and powerfully to the high mountain view, making us see what can be and making us make a commitment to be that. Thank you. And now, we have the opportunity to make a gift. And we have an affirmation and hand movements that we use in this church. And as we begin, let us feel that we are indeed that light. Together, I am light,
flowing through me, blessing these gifts to radiate peace.
offerings and let us bless them now again.
I am light
And life.
Flowing through me, blessing these gifts to radiate peace.
Okay, we're going to do a few quick announcements, and I'll make it quick because the speaker, again, went over. Okay, Sunday morning circle, 9:30, from Institute of Noetic Sciences, Dr. Chris Bache, the DVD's down there. Yoga Monday and Thursday, and book group on Wednesday, and midweek contemplative service, 5:30, then Oneness Blessing at 6:30, Course in Miracles on Thursday. What a boring church, nothing's going on. Oneness Blessing right after service. And next Sunday, Jesus' formula for healing. And that's it. Let's make our circle. Prayer for protection.
And one more thing, anybody who's on the golf committee will just meet quickly downstairs in the
All
fellowship hall.
committee. So, you know, there's actually churches in the world who only have Sunday services. But we are almost a 7-day-a-week church. Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is the prayer for protection. James Philip Freeman, poet laureate of Unity. And this is the prayer that Buzz Aldrin took to the moon. He actually was an astronaut when he did that. And it is still there as far as we know. So let's say it together for ourselves and all those we're holding in our hearts. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever